Welcome to today's webinar on Newsprint digitization. I'm Will Whitney. With me is Jake Walker, who is our resident Newsprint library kind of archives expert. So that's why he's here to help me describe Newsprint digitization and to help you understand as well and kind of go through a few items about this. And we're both from BMI Imaging. So thank you for joining. Hello, Jake.
Hey, Will.
All right. So the purpose, as we see it, of today's webinar for you is one, to describe newsprint digitization. Everyone probably has a different idea of what that means, but we'll describe it here. And I do see someone's hand is raised, so I know that's going to work. I'll get to that in a second. I'll come back to that, the person that raised their hand. We're going to go over a couple challenges with newsprint digitization, as well as provide options, of course, of how to get it done. So nuts and bolts first. I already saw one hand go up, but other folks, please raise your hand if you can hear me. There should be a little hand icon. Okay, I saw a couple people raise their hand. Thank you so much. You can click the button to put it down again. And please raise your hand if you can see me and Jake and also see the screen that says nuts and bolts. We want to make sure you can see the screen as we go along here. All right, I see people doing that, so we know it's working. Thank you very much. So you are muted. You're not on video, so you don't need to worry about that. Please use the Q&A tool for any questions you have. Just go ahead and ask them on the way. If we see them while we're going along, we will answer them when they pop up or when we get a couple seconds to answer them. But even if we don't answer them right away, we do have time at the end for questions and answers, which we will absolutely pop open any that that are in the question and answer tool, and we'll get to those at the end. But feel free to ask them along the way. All right, so now going right into it. Newsprint digitization. Well, we consider that at BMI. There are a couple different variations, but we include hard copy newsprint, microfilm newsprint, and then what we call born digital. So, publisher may have issues of their titles that they are publishing straight to digital. Maybe they're doing hard copy as well, but it's already existing in a digital format. So although it is digital, we still consider it digitization because of the process that goes into that to get it into maybe a different format or onto a hosted platform or something of that sort. Jake, would you add anything to those descriptions?
Yeah, I mean, those are the three most common. I think most folks won't see the born digital ones directly. I think there may be a few publishers that will send those to libraries nowadays, but more likely that's just, if you have a relationship with a publisher and you've already digitized all of your content and all that's left is the new stuff that they're creating digitally, then they can provide you with those so that you can then put them all together with the microfilm and the newsprint that's already been digitized.
Thank you. That's perfect. Good addition. Okay. So first up, we're going to go into the challenges of hard copy newsprint here. So I'll just hit a few points. Jake is likely going to pop in here again. He's the expert. I'm kind of driving the train, but he's going to poke some holes in what I say and add some color to it. So transportation, of course, you have to get hard copy to someone you choose to work with to scan it. And that could be an issue. You may have a huge collection that just takes a lot of logistics, or just maybe they're fragile, or there's a reason you may be concerned about getting there. How do you box them up? How do you, are you going to deliver? Are you going to ship it? Is the scanning partner potentially us? Are we going to pick it up? There are various items around transportation that could be a challenge or stepping stone. As I just mentioned, the condition of the papers, of the newsprint. Are they clean? Are they packaged nicely? Or are they really old? Maybe you have old early 1900s titles that are in a fragile condition. Maybe they're ripped or in their bound books and the books are kind of falling apart. Various items can cause a challenge to the actual project as well, not just transportation, but actually scanning them. Size of the pages, although not a concern, kind of, the size doesn't matter to you. It's not a problem. It's more of, how do you scan it? How do you get that in a digital form? The reason the size can be a challenge is because various scanners can only capture a certain field of view. So depending on the size of the pages, and Jake, you may have some more information on this. I think it's older titles have very large pages, like the late 1800s, early 1900s, that they're just massive pages that you have to have special setups, special cameras to capture these.
Yeah, by the 30s or 40s, pretty much everything normalized or standardized to a specific size. But BMI, we've done so many of these projects, and we've used so many different pieces of equipment to capture these different sizes. And we've really narrowed it down to equipment that can handle pretty much any size. In fact, we can do these huge, large maps. But this is important for you to understand as if you approach other companies, is what size of material can they handle and how they're going to capture that. Because there are some equipment that is made just for newsprint scanning that won't be able to handle some of the really large newspapers that you see in the early 1900s or so.
Yeah, luckily for us, we have some very clever people that actually we created our own camera setup. So there are, of course, manufacturers that create let's say planetary scanners, the ones that are overhead. They create those for mass scanning and for companies like us to purchase and use. But based on some projects we had to create our own setups, purchasing our own cameras, creating our own devices to capture material that just couldn't be captured on a kind of standard scanner. Jake mentioned maps, giant maps, large books, and I have a picture somewhere, not in the webinar, unfortunately, but one of our VP of operations, one of our on-site project managers, they literally have this camera set up, and there's this map that's probably the size of a room. It's about 10 by 15, and they're taking pictures of different sections of that oversized map at a time, which then gets spliced together to create the single image. So newspapers aren't going to be like crazy like that, but we do have the capability because we have very, very smart people that can create things to handle various projects. So it just takes knowing what you're dealing with and then coming up with a solution. Size of the digital images, that is basically when you're done scanning, done making that conversion happen, and then getting the receivables. The size of those images can be, again, not a problem, just a challenge. And Jake, you want to talk a little about that, of what you've seen with clients, like getting the delivery, us transferring it to them, and then how they ingest those potentially large images.
Yeah, I mean, we'll further down in the webinar, we're going to get into the different type of file formats, which are going to be things that typically our clients will provide us with. Hey, we need this, or we're applying for a grant and the grant requires us to do this. So those are going to affect the size of your images, the type of file it is. Also the DPI. With these cameras, we have the ability to capture at very high DPIs or the standard DPIs. So that's greatly going to affect the size of the digital image. Now, your challenge when you get these files is where are you going to put them and can you manage them? Most libraries do not have these giant server rooms where they're able to manage huge files and lots of data. So that's going to be a challenge if you plan to store and host your own data, or if you're providing it to your patrons, how are they going to access it? If they're accessing it from local computers, also something to consider, because of the bigger the file size, the slower it is going to load. It can be frustrating. It can bog down machines. So those are all considerations that you're going to have to think about. But it is something that's inherent with hard copy newsprint. You are going to have larger files than you would with microfilm. For a number of reasons. It's a larger paper, but also you're getting color images, which is making them more dense.
And on some of those old, earlier titles, again, like the 1800s, early 1900s, just absolutely, I think I might have it on the next, no, well, just super text heavy, text dense pages where it's just massive amounts of data that's just all in a single image, that in addition to what Jake's saying, for everything else that goes into it, just creates those large digital images. So something to consider, potential challenges, things that can be, of course, dealt with, just things to keep in mind as you move forward with the hard copy version.
Yeah, but one thing to mention with hard copy, there are some pros. And the biggest pro is that that's going to be a really good looking image when you're done. A lot of times it's in color, and you're going to get great text search results from that. Much better text search results. So the OCR, optical character recognition, when you run that, you're going to get better results, better searchability than you would with microfilm. So each one of these record types that we're going to talk about, you're going to have pros and cons. And the biggest pro with hard copy newsprint is it's going to be a really good looking image with great text search.
Yeah, it's a good point, because the hard copy, that is the first generation, unless you consider the born digital. But compared to microfilm, the paper version, that is generation one. Then you take you capture an image of it, so you're looking at a second generation. If you're using microfilm, you actually, I think it's basically a third generation image, because you had the original, which then got photographed and now is on the microfilm. So the microfilm is generation 2, and then you scan the microfilm to create the digital image. So you're on a third generation image by the time you're doing any processing, compared to using the original hard copy newsprint. So that's a good point, Jake, that you'll typically have better, especially OCR data when you run it through the processing. Now onto the challenges of microfilm. So similar to the newsprint, the hard copy is the condition of the physical film. Yes, film can be bad. It can be very good. There's a lot of variation, a lot of gray area in between. But if you have poor physical film, then the images are likely to be poor too, or there may be an issue even capturing the images if you haven't kept your microfilm stored properly. Maybe it's starting to deteriorate with a couple. There are various diseases that microfilm can get, such as one of the most prevalent is called vinegar syndrome, because it actually starts to smell like vinegar. So things can cause issues with the film. So if the condition of the physical film is not good, you may not get a good digital image on the back end. In the same vein, you may have great physical film, the film we're going to scan, but if the original papers were poorly done, no matter the quality of the physical microfilm, that image is still going to be bad. So a lot of times we get microfilm, not a lot, but we occasionally see microfilm where the image comes out, let's say blurry, maybe even not the whole roll of film, maybe just a couple images, maybe the back half of it, or the back 30% of the images are a little fuzzy, and clients or folks we're working with may say, hey, why is this fuzzy? When you look at the original film, that image might be out of focus. So whoever actually captured the images from the original hard copy when they were doing the filming had it out of focus. We can't fix that. That's just something that is burned into the microfilm, and it's just out of focus. It's just poor filming. So that's something that can be a challenge when you're using microfilm. Is just if the original condition, the papers were not good, or how it was filmed was not done properly, it could just be a potential issue on the back end. We mentioned the text dense older papers, same idea with the microfilm. Indexing and OCR. So, well, Jake already mentioned OCR, where the original, the hard copy, is going to be the best version typically for OCR. But indexing, the challenge with that could be, and we've seen it various times, the roll of film or whatever was captured from the original may not be in the right place on the microfilm roll. So someone may have filmed the wrong title in a batch of, you have title A and title B. Someone might be filming title A, but they mistakenly put some of title B into that, and it causes an issue with, when you digitize, saying, well, why is this issue in this batch of film? BMI, you scanned it wrong. This is in the wrong place. Not necessarily. That's just because it's actually on the roll of film. It was just filmed improperly. So Jake, you want to add some information to indexing, some challenges you see in addition to something like that?
Yeah, it's kind of funny. I was just going through a big project we did with a library out of Oklahoma, and there's numerous occasions where a title would have just a small variance in the name. This is the first time I've seen this, so this is why it's fresh in my mind. There was periods. They had a period after the title, so it would be like, the Standard Herald, and then they would have a variance of that would say the Standard Dash Herald, and then there was one that said the Standard Herald period. And I thought it was the most bizarre thing. I thought we had made a mistake indexing it, and so I went and looked at the physical image, or the microfilmed image, and sure enough, it had a period there. I don't know why they did that. They only did it for that one issue, but those are challenges that we're going to see, because we're going to index it the way we see it. That may not be the way you want to do it. So that's something to at least think about. How are you going to kind of put everything together? And, maybe you want to eliminate the word the, even though it's at the title, things like that. And then also dates. Sometimes we'll see dates that are incorrectly put on newsprint, but we're going to type it out the way we see it. Another great example is when they do like 100-year, this is the 100-year issue. Sometimes they will put that year, like let's say 1900 on it, and when it's a 2000 newspaper. And, you know, they did it because it was fun and it was like, okay, this is the 1900, but it's actually not a 1900 newspaper. So these are challenges that we have and that you have that we'll have to work together to kind of come up with the best solution on how to handle those.
What we typically like to do, even though you have these variations and these potential changes you want to make, we do like to start with, let's replicate what it actually is. Because as soon as you start changing things, it's hard to really go back in time and figure out, well, what's it supposed to be? I mean, you can, but it just makes it more difficult. So Jake's done this with customers. I've done this with some customers where you scan the film, let's say it's a 500 microfilm roll collection. And when you're done, you have all the different titles that were indexed. And then our client comes back to us and says, great, I see the titles. Yes, this one was historically called this, but I want to take these, you know, these 3 out of the 15 titles that are here and just combine these 3 and just call them all this. So we can do things like that to make it simpler, because your patrons may be coming in saying, well, am I on the, you know, am I supposed to be looking at this one or this one? They kind of the same name. I don't know. I know this one's this year, but I thought it was this title. So if you kind of do that post scanning, post project adjudication, that's something we can help with. But it's nice to see what's the original, so you have that context before making the changes. It makes it simpler for everybody. I think that's anything else on this slide, Jake, before moving forward.
No, I mean, just real quickly mentioning again, OCR, you're not going to have the greatest results from microfilm. Unfortunately, it's just the way the technology is right now with OCR and just the way that super dense, tight columns, it's not going to be perfect. So just temper your expectations. Don't expect perfection. You know, 70, 80% accuracy is really good. But just keep that in the back of your mind.
All right. Well, actually, you mentioned pros on the other one. Do you have any pros, you know, benefits of?
Yeah, I mean, really the biggest pro is it's less expensive. So scanning from newsprint is probably 10, maybe 20 times more expensive than it is scanning from microfilm newsprint. So the biggest pro is it's cheaper and it's easier and it's faster. That's really the biggest pro.
And you're probably going to have more of the material. I just anecdotally, because a lot of folks aren't keeping.
Very few libraries have everything on newsprint. They'll have a small section on newsprint. Most will have everything on microfilm.
And the reason we actually know that is because since the 60s, we were doing a lot of filming for libraries and archives, and they'd give us their newspapers, we'd film them, and then they dispose of the newsprint because they're thinking, well, why am I going to keep all this material here when I can have the microfilm? So it's very rare that you're going to see really old newsprint, but you may have a special collection of, let's say, bound newsprint issues because for whatever reason. So there may be some very old ones, but typically the older stuff will be on microfilm. All right, so now you see some challenges, some pros. Going to the options of availability, at least if you're working with BMI, we're just going to speak specifically to the 2 options that we see it when you work with us. Traditional is what most people can do. And what you have here is you're creating like PDFs, TIFFs, JPEGs, LZWs, things of that sort. So I know you wanted to talk about this a little bit, Jake. So maybe you want to hit these before I go further.
Yeah, I don't want to get too I mean, I could go on and on about the different file formats and what you need. Most of our clients are just getting a PDF. So it's 1 PDF per issue. The issue date's named by, you know, January 1st, 2001, whatever the title is. And it's a PDF. It's a searchable PDF. So you have the OCR in there. We give you it in grayscale, color, and black and white. Color, of course, if it's from newsprint, grayscale, if it's from microfilm. TIFF is usually an uncompressed TIFF. So this is for special projects that maybe you're working with your state's newspaper program, and they would like a copy as well. So you're providing them a copy. They'll typically want an uncompressed TIFF, which also falls under the LZW. LZW is not technically a format, or it's a compression algorithm. So it's still a TIFF file, but LZW is a compression algorithm that is essentially lossless to the naked eye. So we prefer that because it's a little bit smaller file size. Uncompressed files are going to be huge. And then JPEG is another derivative that a lot of state institutions or a lot of state programs that will require that derivative file. But like I said, most of our clients, just a standard 1 PDF per issue date is going to be sufficient.
And exactly what you said at the beginning of that statement there is, when you think of digitization, this is what probably 99% of people think of. I scan something, I get something like a PDF. That's why we call it traditional. That's what most people think of. Then typically folks are delivering on USB or FTP. So it's file transfer protocol, basically an electronic delivery. So we provide a site, more or less, where we load the files to, and then you download them from there. That would be FTP. USB is like a hard drive. We load it to USB, send it to you, and you pull the images off there. Pros and cons to each of those. The issue with FTP, although it's great for just simply not having to send anything, just load it and then pull it down, is when you do have large files. I remember some of Jake's projects, we've talked about these many times, are you load large files from our side, and we are built for scanning, transferring data, sending images, all that goes into that. So it's projects that were slow for us to load. When Jake's clients were pulling him down, it was just taking an extremely long time because they don't have the computing power and the processing power to download these files quickly. So it's not just us getting them to you, it's you actually getting them off these servers to your side. This, again, specifically for larger files. Whereas USB, it's just, here you go, you get it, you plug it in, and then you copy over. It still takes some time, but it's not that, electronic transfer that can be a bit laborious on the download side. Any comments on that, Jake?
Just that USB is the preference. I mean, that's the biggest comment I have.
Right. And then what do you do with these? Well, you get the files back, and then you do whatever you want with them, really. But you may store them on your local network. You may have some sort of platform that you can put it on your website. That depends on your IT team, what you have available. You may be subscribing to some sort of platform that allows you to host these images for your patrons, or it may just be some sort of setup where someone has to be in there. It's a local application that a patron comes in and can view the images in some way. So just, it's however you want to store them, but we get them to you, and then you put them where you need them to go. Now, digital reel compared to traditional, those are the two main methods. Digital reel is our homegrown application that was originally created for microfilm, but now it includes microfilm, microfiche, paper records, born digital records, and so on and so forth. So this is the other path you can take other than the traditional. Now, we scan the records, and then what we have is a web portal. So here's the login screen that we import or load the images to, and then you can access them through the web portal from any internet connected device. What a lot of our library clients do, both Jake's, mine, some of our other sales reps, are they create a link directly from their website to digital reel. So here's one of my clients, Watsonville Public Library, and on their website, they just have a link saying, hey, you want to look at the archival microfilm records, the archival newspaper records, click here. You click there, and then it shoots you into our application. So your patrons don't have to log in, they don't have to do anything or know necessarily where they're going. It says, hey, you want to see this? Click from your website directly into the portal where they can then access the microfilm. Now, with that, there's some things we'll talk about later, but this ties into how you want your folks to access it. Some of our clients want access to these hosted data sets only within their local, only within the physical locations of their libraries. So what we can do is actually lock their IP address so that someone can only access the hosted site if they access it from inside that location. That could be for various reasons. For maybe they just want, the library only wants them to access it from there. There may be copyright restrictions, whatever it is, we can do that. Other folks say, nope, for whatever reasons, we've looked in this, our patrons can access it from anywhere as long as they just go from our site. So it depends on what you want to do there. Digital reel also has global text search. So why that's important is because you can search the entire data set. So you may have 500 issues, you may have 5 million images. You can search the entire database in less than a few seconds for terms, dates, names, et cetera, and go over that entire database. So instead of knowing exactly where something is, you just need to know what it is, especially if your users, they may not know where their uncle's rodeo prize article was from sometime in the 50s, maybe 60s. They just know, well, I know the name of my uncle. I know he was in the paper. I'm not even sure which paper. I'm going to search for his name. So that benefit of global text search allows your users to get what they want quickly instead of having to go through maybe 10 or 15 years of data trying to find something. Any comments on this so far, Jake?
Yeah, so this is obviously the most popular option and this is why a lot of folks are going to digital, so they can do the text searching. And kind of going off of what Will was saying, they're looking for something but don't quite know where it is. That's often the case with obituaries, which is a very common thing searched for. So I'm looking for the obituary report on my great grandpa. He died on this date, but there's not a newspaper published that date, or I went to the obituary section that day and it wasn't there. So you just don't know when, obviously, they actually published the obituary. So it's within months, maybe sometime within the year. And so that global text search is going to be really important because you can search the whole year, you can search the whole month, you can search just that day, and that will really help narrow your searches so you don't have to look at every single page. And then the cool thing about that, you'll see in that little screenshot there that here are your search results, and then you get a bunch of listed results. When you click on that, it goes directly to that page of Newsprint, highlights the thing that you were searching for, and you actually see the image, the actual newsprint. It's not just text, it's the actual page of newspaper. So all the images, everything on there, and then you can print, save, download, whatever you need to do from there.
And on this example, you're going, well, geez, what am I going to do with 270,000 results for John Kennedy? It's just an example, but what you can do is I could type, I'm not in the platform now, but if I type John Fitzgerald Kennedy, it would change the results. If I typed John F. Kennedy or JFK, those results would change. If I put parentheses around John Kennedy, it would give me a more reduced number of hits. So it's kind of like Google search-ish, where this is searching for any instance of John or Kennedy. That's why you see Kennedy highlighted by itself. Once you put parentheses, it's looking for specific words and language together. So that would not pop up if I put the parentheses there because it's not John Kennedy, it's just Kennedy. So you can use a little bit of nuance there to reduce those results to get what you really want. And I see a question. Let me see what that is.
We're actually going to handle that in the next in 2 slides.
Oh, yeah, you can see the questions too?
I can, yeah. I've been monitoring.
All right, since you said that, I will hold on that question.
Yeah.
Actually, I'm going to look at okay, yeah, we will answer that in the copyright section, definitely. Okay. Image enhancement is another key item of digital reel, which the next slide talks about, but basically allows you or your users to optimize images based on what you think is an optimal image. So what Jake thinks is a great picture, I may think is okay. What I think is awesome, he may think is meh. So this image enhancement allows you and your users to change images based on what they want to see there. And the reason that's important, because if I just send you PDFs, you kind of have the image. It's that. I mean, there are some tools you can do a little manipulation, but it's just you have to have another application. You have to know what you're using. It to probably various items. You have to have someone that knows how to use these tools, probably like Adobe Acrobat or something of that sort, where it can be a lot of work. In digital reel, it's already included, so you have all this included already, plus the image enhancement. I'm going to the next screen here. This is a blown up image from one of our clients' rolls. This microfilm again. So from one of their issues that was scanned from microfilm, this is a snippet from a page. So this is the original bitonal TIFF image. So digital reel is actually layered. When you first go to the images and the platform, you're going to see the bitonal or black and white TIFF. The reason we show that first is because it's a smaller image. It allows speed of access, and you can get to things faster when it's that smaller file size. But we also have a layered JPEG in the background, which then will allow you to adjust it. So this is the original image. If you just got a PDF in black and white, kind of what you get. Not bad. You can see who it is, but not great either. Now, if I clicked the grayscale enhancement button in digital reel, this is what I would get. So, these aren't night and day differences, but you can see that original, that it's a little better. There's some tonality. You can see a little more of the photo. It's just a bit of a better image. But Then I went in and I enhanced, I changed the contrast, changed the brightness a little bit, and then I got this. Now, again, I think this is better than this. This is dark for me. This shows a little bit more nuance, little light, a little more less darkness around the shadows and shading. Again, you may think, no, Will, that's too bright. The other image is better, or it should be darker. The nice thing is when you're in digital reel, you can make it whatever you want. That's the point, is original, enhanced, optimized based on what I think is a good image. So that's the real benefit of image enhancement.
And the common question I get is, okay, I make that change, or a patron goes in and makes that change. Does it stay like that? And no, it doesn't. It reverts back to the original form. So that way, if a patron's making everything dark, it's not like ruining all your newspapers. It goes right back to the way it was, because this is an archive. We're archiving it the way the microfilm was. So everyone's going to be able to adjust it the way they need it. And this is going to be super helpful for some of the older newsprint, especially early 1900s, late 1800s, where you have light and dark areas, or if it was really bad microfilming and you have overexposure and lighting issues. This is going to save the bacon right here. This is going to allow you to actually be able to see what's written there. And all these tools are very unique to digital reel, our own in-house technology, but we created this. There have been some imitations, but this is the original location for being able to find and do those tools. And it's going to make everything almost guarantee everything's going to be legible. And you're not going to be able to do that with the PDF. You're not going to be able to change different brightness and contrast and make things legible, but digital reel will allow you to do that. So it's a little bit of an insurance policy that things are legible.
Yeah, the key thing that Jake was describing, if you go from hard copy newsprint, again, that's going to be a great image, or should be, whoever scans it from the original, but especially from microfilm, there are just some weird things that happen with microfilm. And a lot of times we see, you deliver a roll of film, you see the images, and maybe half of them are dark and half of them are light. Half of them look good, but then the other ones are either too light or too dark. And it's common because when you're doing the actual filming, you may photograph half of a roll's amount of images, and then your shift is over, someone else comes in and takes over, or it's the end of the day, and then the next person comes in the morning and starts finishing off that roll. Depending on the light settings and how the images were captured, that can change even images on the same roll. So that's something when we do our density checks, we actually get an average density for a roll that's an optimal image for the entirety of the roll, but that doesn't mean every image itself individually is optimal. It's an average density. So you may have a lot of images that look great, but some are too dark, too bright, whatever. Instead of having to scan the roll multiple times, which we've had clients do, they said, I want you to scan this in different settings multiple times. That's expensive. In digital reel, you just scan it once and then you adjust when you need to. Another thing that's one of my colleagues likes to say is you're probably going to look at maybe 5% of the images in your collections, or your folks will get to them. Why optimize every single image, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, millions of images? Why optimize and spend that when you're only going to be accessing a small portion? If it doesn't look that great, just adjust it when you need to and then move on. You're not spending all that extra money up front to, again, optimize, which is a very subjective term, because I think this is great. You may think this is better. Who's to really be the true decider, and how do you make that a simple process? Instead, you scan it at that setting and you allow the image enhancement, the optimization within the application to be your kind of backdrop. All right, now digitization process, we'll kind of get through this fairly quickly, and then we'll get to the copyright, which is the end. But the process, if you work with us, we can't speak to other people because everyone has their own internal methodology. This is the high level for BMI. First, we get the materials. That's Bernard. He's one of our drivers. If you're local to us and we can pick it up, you'll probably see him getting your records, either film, hard copy. Might be Bernard or one of our other drivers that's going to pick it up in one of our vans. Otherwise, you'd send it to us, you'd ship it to us, or if it's a born digital project, you could send us the USB with the images on there, or maybe there's an FTP transfer. When we get the materials, at least if they're some sort of physical document like a USB in a package, or newsprint or microfilm rolls in boxes, we get them, we tag them, we barcode them, so we track them throughout the entirety of the project while they're with us. Then what's going to happen is someone like Jake is going to build the first, before the process flow, is actually creating what we call an SOP, or scope of project, where he's creating the steps that then our production team will translate into the production process flow. So this is something, and this is actually from our internal system called Unity. So Jake would go in, create the service line saying, this is what's going to happen for this project. I need this, this, this. Here's the indexing. Here's how I want it scanned. Here's what I want to index like. He's basically translating whatever contract and scope of work we have with you into something that's usable by our operations team. And then once that gets pushed into over to the production team, they will build the process flow. This is a real process flow with a fake name on it, but your project may have 10 steps, it may have 50, depends on the complexity, but this is going to be used to track your project throughout the entirety of the job, each step of the way. And what this does, when we build that process flow, that's part of our M1, our milestone 1 proof of concept testing process. And what we do, we get your project, Jake creates the work order, our production team then creates the process flow. We're going to run a small batch of materials. Let's just say you have 500 rolls of microfilm. We may do 5 to 10 rolls, depending on how many titles, the different, how many years it spans. And we're going to run those rolls through the entirety of the process flow to make sure the process flow works, to make sure the end result, let's say it's digital reel, looks good, the images are good, everything's all hunky-dory. Jake's going to take a look at it and then review it with you and make sure that you like it, because you may say you wanted roll level indexing, very basic, but then you look at it, go, you know what, I wanted that. Can we do something different? Can we tweak a little bit? Can we change this? Or, I wanted the year to be 1989 through 1999. Can we just make it 89 through 99? Little tweaks like that, no big deal. We change those, we adjust the process flow. And then once everything's fine, we both agree on it, you give us the thumbs up, the approval, and then we move into full production mode. It also allows us to find things that no one knew about. There's always something in a project where we start scanning, we all thought it's going to go like this. Even our clients said it would be perfect. This is what you're going to get. It's going to look like this. Something changes. It allows us to try to catch those in the milestone 1, which would be best, so we can address it immediately. But if not, then we may catch it later in the project and hit it when we need to. So once the milestone's approved, then it's the conversion. What we do, again, let's using microfilm as an example. We photograph the microfilm, then we do those density tests, then we start scanning. If it's hard copy newsprint, then what would happen is we prep it. We have our scanner operators going through and make sure any bindings are removed, the pages are flattened out, everything's in the right order, so then they can give it to our scanners to then do the actual conversion. Here's an example of a density check on a roll of microfilm. So you can see they're actually taking a check. We do it at the beginning, middle, and end of each roll, and then create that average density that's then put into our scanners for calibrating what that roll needs for proper scanning settings when it gets converted. And then lastly is the delivery. And that could be, it might be USB, scan everything. If it's a super large project, there may be multiple deliveries. If it's, let's say, 500 rolls, you just want it all at once, it takes, let's say, 6 weeks. We just deliver at the end, FTP or USB. If it's digital reel, by then, the last part is everything's done. But the benefit is, as rolls are loaded, completed, and indexed, they're immediately available in digital reel. So once the milestone's done, you're accessing the actual application immediately, those 5, 10, 15 rolls, whatever it is. And then as rolls get loaded, you can see them being loaded over time before the project's complete. You don't have to wait till the end. Anything on the process, Jake, before I move to that last slide?
Yeah, just one thing on the delivery. That's why digital reel is also very helpful for our patrons or for our customers, is that patrons will have access to the newsprint while we're scanning. So if it's a 2-month-long project, you don't need to tell every patron that comes through the doors, hey, sorry, BMI has our microfilm, you can't access newspapers. You can say, oh, well, BMI has our microfilm, they're scanning it, and here is the link to what they've already scanned. And who knows, maybe we've scanned what they're looking for. So don't look at it as if, BMI has our microfilm, don't even ask us about it because we don't have it. It is available almost instantly from when we're scanning it. So it just makes things a little bit easier on your end when you have digital reel.
All right. Last section here is about copyright, because there's always something that's asked. So first, we cannot give legal advice. We're not lawyers. We can't tell you what to do or not do. We can just give you our interpretation of things and what some of our customers do. But really, the last bullet point I think also says here, you got to talk to your own team, your own management. Let's say you're at a county library system, you talk to the team that runs legal there. A lot of our city folks will just go to their city attorney to ask about various copyright questions, but we cannot be the ones that give you legal advice. However, we have some, here's some stuff that most people do. One of which, and actually let me look at the question again. So, can the IP lock be set up so that only some newspapers, those that are out of copyright, can be accessed from anywhere, and the ones that are still in can be accessed from within the library? Okay, perfect.
Yeah, so that's the next bullet point.
Yeah. So we mentioned you can IP lock to locations. Let's say you want to keep everything only internal and you have 5 locations. You give us the IP address for each of those. We lock them all down. Only people that walk into the physical library, just like they would with the physical film, can access the data set if it's on digital reel. So we can do that. We can lock parts of a collection. So many of Jake's customers, a few of mine, they have, like one of them, Sunnyvale Public Library, they determined that anything pre-1964 could be accessible from anywhere. Anything after that would have to be inside the library. So what they did is they created 2 data sets in digital reel, one of which was called pre-1964. And if you're on their website, you click that, you can actually see from anywhere, you can go see all those titles that are pre-1964. For the other pieces, if you're outside the library, outside the IP locations, and you click that and say, no, access denied. But if you go into the library location, I think they have 1 location. You go in there and you click that, then you'd see not just the pre-1964, you'd see the entire collection. Let's say it's 400 rolls. So inside the library, you see all 400. Outside the library, maybe you see 200. So you're able to lock just part of collection. Basically create multiple data sets for you so you can make that separation. And that's what I just mentioned about being internal. So it really comes down to different cities, different counties, different libraries. They have different ideas of how to interpret the various items around copyright. So again, that's why we can't say, and here's the answer for you. It really comes down to you saying, we talk to our team, this is what they're saying. We're just, as Jake's analogy is, you have a car, you need to park somewhere. Digital reel is kind of like the parking garage. You still own the content. We're just providing the space. You own the car. You can park in our garage and use it. It's great. You can get all the benefits of that, but it's still your car. We don't own the data. You own the data. So you're just using the platform to make your data accessible to your patrons. Jake,
yeah, and then one point to touch on with copyright, it kind of plug a lot of the work that you've put into our website and everything is we've got this, Will and I worked on a couple blogs and articles, a lot of good information on copyright with links to some of the Library of Congress information. So yeah, do your research there, do the research on our website, do your own research. But worst case scenario, you digitize everything, whether it's in copyright or not, make it available to your public or your patrons in-house. And then you can figure out, okay, what can we make available to the masses outside the library? But first and foremost, get that stuff digital, get it searchable and accessible in-house.
All right. Yep, that wraps up that. So now we're on the questions. So we answered, let me see. So we answered that one. Let me see if there are any additional ones. I don't see any. So I'll move to the next slide, which basically wraps up the presentation. If you have a question before we finish, pop it up there, and I'm sure Jake will catch it if I'm talking. We'll try to answer it. Contact information. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to send an email likely by tomorrow afternoon that'll have a recording of this, so you can have that recording. That's my email, but I'll include Jake on tomorrow's email with the recording on it, so you can contact either of us if you want to talk about a project or have any questions. We suggest signing up for the newsletter. If you have your cell phone on you, just hover over that QR code. It'll take you to the page. Just put in your email. You get an email every other Tuesday, new articles, videos, webinars that are kind of things of that sort. It just keeps you in the loop of digitization. So if you have a project in mind, even if it's, you never know, 2 years away, you say, I really love to do this, I just don't have budget, I don't have time, whatever it is, you at least keep getting information to give you ideas and thoughts on how to proceed with the digitization project. So we suggest you sign up for the newsletter. We don't blow up your email every day. It's once every 2 weeks. Other than that, that wraps up our show today. So thank you for joining. Thank you, Jake, for your expertise. And again, I'll get that email out, and looking forward to hearing from some of you if you have any questions about digitization projects for Newsprint. Otherwise,
All right,
that's
thanks,
it.
Will.
Have a great rest of your Wednesday. See you, Jake.